Hi there, I'm Lori. My sister spent 50 grand on her perfect wedding and still had the nerve to ask me to babysit her daughter on the same day I wasn't invited. My mom said it was for the best. Then came the bruises, the silence, the lies about my mental health, and the worst part? I wasn't just cut out, I was erased. How do you fight back when your own family rewrites the truth? The envelope was glossy, expensive. My name was printed on the front in swirling gold calligraphy, the kind they use for gala dinners or society page nuptials. I smiled before I even opened it. Maybe, just maybe, Shayna was extending an olive branch. Inside, a heavy card gleamed with the promise of her $50,000 dream wedding. But there was no RSVP line for me, no seating information, just a small handwritten note. Could you take care of Talia for the day? You're the only one she's comfortable with. XO Shayna. My chest constricted. I flipped the card over, searching for something, anything, that said my name belonged in that ballroom. But there was only silence inked in gold. I wasn't invited to the wedding. I was assigned a task. 16 years ago, we shared bunk beds and secrets. She was the star. I was the quiet sister with books under my pillow. Even back then, Shayna knew how to bend attention toward herself. I never minded, not really. After Dad was pushed out of our lives, Shayna became the center of my mother's solar system. And I was gravity. Necessary, invisible. Now, I teach part-time at a public high school. I budget everything, even emotions. Meanwhile, Shayna runs a boutique that sells dresses more expensive than my car. She's always had a flair for image. Even when she left Talia with me for days during her divorce, no explanation, no apology, just a baby and a bottle bag, like I was the nanny, not the aunt. The phone rang. I knew the tone before I picked up. "Don't forget to be there early on Saturday," Mom said briskly. "Talia gets cranky if she misses her nap." Wait, Mom, why wasn't I? You know why. Let's not make this about you. This is Shayna's moment. But She hung up, just like that. I stared at the screen, wondering how many times a person could be reminded they were replaceable before it started to feel like fact. I was still holding the phone when Dana, a colleague from the school, called. "I ran into Shayna at the salon. She said you weren't invited because of your recovery." I froze. My what? She said you've been dealing with stuff, anxiety, emotional regulation. I didn't want to pry, but are you okay? My mouth went dry. That argument years ago, after Dad vanished, I had yelled, cried, fallen apart. Shayna was there. So was Mom. That night, they told me I was too sensitive, too much, so this was it. My absence wasn't an oversight. It was a strategy. Frame it like compassion, like protection. Banish me and call it kindness. A ding from my phone. It was a photo. A friend from our old church had sent a picture of the wedding program. There, tucked under the bridesmaid list, was a footnote. Lori Simmons, unable to attend due to ongoing recovery. We wish her continued healing. My breath caught. Not just uninvited, labeled. They didn't just erase me, they rewrote me. No one called to ask if it was true. No one questioned it. Why would they? The narrative was clean. The optics polished. Shayna always knew how to sell a story. I sat in my living room, the silence hugging me like wool in summer. The email invitation glared from my screen. I clicked delete. Then I looked over to the bookshelf where a framed photo of me and Talia sat, her tiny arms wrapped around my neck, both of us grinning in the sun. If they want to write me out of the story, they forgot I still hold the pen. The call came mid-morning. I was grading essays when my phone buzzed with Aunt Judith's name flashing across the screen. I almost let it ring out. I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries, but something told me to pick up. "Sweetheart," she began, voice like chamomile tea. "I just wanted to check in. Are you still seeing someone about your episodes?" The word hit like a slap. "Excuse me?" I kept my tone even, but my hand gripped the phone tighter. "You know what Shayna mentioned a while back? That you were working through things. I only ask because I care." Aunt Judith meant well, but the knife was already lodged, and it twisted deeper with every innocent syllable. Shayna hadn't just excluded me. She'd infected the narrative, turned family into quiet doubters. I ended the call with a mumbled thanks and stared at my screen. the red pen frozen mid-word. The stories people tell about you, when they're repeated often enough, become easier to believe than the truth you're actually living. I lay awake that night, retracing every odd glance, every half-finished sentence at recent family dinners, the polite smiles, the way conversations shifted when I walked into a room. It hadn't been my imagination. I should have confronted her, demanded to know why, but then what? She'd twist my anger into proof I was unstable. That's how gaslighting works. You start second-guessing even your own outrage. Maybe that was her goal all along. I picked up Talia on Friday after school. Shayna didn't come out, just sent her out the door with a packed duffel and a casual wave from the window. Talia didn't smile. "Hi, Bug," I said, squatting to her level. "Ready for movie night?" She nodded but didn't meet my eyes. At my apartment, while helping her change into pajamas, I saw it, a purplish bruise shadowed against the soft skin of her upper arm. "Talia, how did this happen?" She flinched when I touched it. Not theatrically, subtly, a reflex. "I fell at school," she muttered. "But I've taught for 15 years. I know what playground bruises look like, and this wasn't one of them." I said nothing, just helped her into her shirt and pulled the blanket up tighter than usual that night. The next day, Talia barely ate. She picked at her sandwich, chewing with mechanical disinterest. When I asked about her friends or her week, she shrugged. "I don't want to go home," she said quietly, not looking up. I felt that sentence all the way in my bones. I had no children of my own, but I knew what fear sounded like when it slipped out between words. I sat on the edge of my bed later that night, laptop open, a dozen tabs blinking back at me. Signs of abuse, behavioral shifts, withdrawal, sleep changes. The deeper I scrolled, the more the air seemed to thicken around me. I felt like I was choking on dread. But I couldn't act on suspicion alone. Shayna would weaponize my concern, turn it into hysteria. "You need proof." I closed the screen and turned to watch Talia sleep. She looked peaceful, but her thumb was tucked under the pillow, clenched tight, like a soldier hiding something fragile. Sunday morning, I opened my phone and hesitated. Then I hit record. Silent clips. Her not eating, her staring out the window, the way she shrank when the microwave beeped too loudly. If they call me crazy again, at least this time I'll have something to show. It was a small thing. The cabinet door slipped from my hand and slammed shut. A sharp crack of wood against wood in the stillness of a quiet Sunday morning. Talia screamed, not loudly. No, it was worse than that. She yelped, gasped, and darted under the kitchen table like a hunted animal. Her tiny fingers clawed at the baseboard, knees curled against her chest, whispering through a panic-strained voice, "Don't hit me. Please don't hit me." My body froze. Air evacuated my lungs. For a second, I forgot how to move. I sank to my knees beside the table, voice trembling but soft. "Sweetheart, it's okay. No one's going to hurt you. I promise. I'd never..." She didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on something only she could see, something behind my face, something that came from somewhere else. And in that moment, I knew with horrifying clarity. This wasn't just a bruise. This was trauma. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch while Talia curled up beside me, her breathing uneven, even in sleep. Over the next few days, I started noticing patterns I'd missed before. The way she stiffened when my hand brushed hers, her voice dropping to a whisper when she spoke about home. She muttered things like, "Mom said I ruined her day," or "I should just stay quiet." I began recording, not out of paranoia, but because I needed something tangible, something no one could argue with when the time came. I filmed her flinching at loud sounds, her hollow look during breakfast, her sudden withdrawal when asked a simple question. Each clip felt like another needle in my chest, but I couldn't stop. Not anymore. Delilah called Thursday evening. "Family brunch Sunday," she chirped. "Don't forget, and bring Talia." It wasn't a request. It never was. The air in my car was thick with silence as I drove to the house I used to call home. Talia held my hand tighter than usual. I squeezed back. When we arrived, Shayna was already performing, hair perfect, lips glossed, laughter rehearsed. She hugged Delilah like a model daughter. When her eyes met mine, they flicked down to Talia without emotion. "She's quiet today," she said flatly. "She's been tired," I replied. Shayna hummed, then walked off, already smiling at someone else. Halfway through brunch, Delilah poured herself another mimosa and leaned back in her chair like a queen about to deliver a decree. "You know," she said, loud enough to cut the hum of small talk, "Lori never did handle pressure well. That child's the same, fragile, useless." The words didn't land like a slap. They shattered like glass inside me. I looked at Talia, eyes lowered, face frozen, fingers white from gripping my sleeve. No one spoke. Shayna sipped her wine and smirked. I didn't flinch. Not this time. I held the silence like a weapon, let it stretch and sting. They wanted me to scream. They wanted proof of the unstable sister. Instead, I stood slowly and said, "Talia needs some air," and I walked her outside without asking. In the downstairs bathroom, I locked the door behind us and leaned over the sink. My reflection looked nothing like me, pale, tired, hardened. "They really think I'm nothing," I whispered, "like I don't exist." My fingers curled around my phone. I opened the photo gallery and watched the videos again. My hands shook, not with fear, resolve. I tapped record and brought the phone to my lips. "They can erase me," I said quietly, "but they won't erase her." I didn't mean to hear it. I was just dropping off some old photo albums Delilah had asked for, and her voice floated through the slightly cracked back window like it was meant to find me. "She's not my concern. Shayna is my only daughter. The other one? She's been dead to me for years." Dead. I didn't move, didn't blink. My heart didn't race, it just stopped. There wasn't anger. Not yet. Just cold. A numbing, hollow, echoing cold that spread through my chest like winter swallowing a room. I walked back to my car, got in, closed the door gently, quietly. Then I sat, staring at the wheel, wondering if maybe I had misheard. But I hadn't. Her voice was so certain, so cruelly calm. This wasn't frustration or a slip of the tongue. This was a funeral, and I hadn't even known I was the one in the casket. 16 years ago, I was 14, state science fair finalist. My volcano demonstration had taken weeks. I stood on stage with my certificate in hand, skin tingling with hope, eyes on the auditorium doors. She never came. Shayna had her piano recital that night. Delilah said she couldn't be in two places at once, but the real message was always clear. When forced to choose, she never chose me. Back then, it hurt in a way that still allowed me to pretend. Now, it just confirms what's always been true. I was the shadow in someone else's spotlight. Shayna texted me the next day. "Coffee? Just us. No drama." I shouldn't have gone, but I did. The cafe was one of those curated places with exposed brick, $6 lattes, and people pretending to write screenplays. She picked a corner booth, already had her drink, almond milk, 2 pumps caramel, no whip. When I sat down, she smiled like we were old friends catching up. "Thanks for coming," I nodded. "What's this about?" She leaned in, fingertips grazing the lid of her cup. "Look, I get it. You've been feeling things, acting out. But I need you to stop making noise." "Noise?" "If you want to keep your job at the school, maybe think about staying quiet. People talk. References disappear. You're still on thin ice, remember?" There it was. The mask ripped off. No more pretending to care. No more polished sisterhood. Just a threat. One that landed with surgical precision. I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I sipped my coffee and smiled. "You done?" I asked, cool as glass. She tilted her head like she was amused. "Don't be stupid, Lori. You're not built for a fight." I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table. "Neither are you." Outside, the wind bit at my skin, but I didn't shiver. I pulled out my phone, slipped in a headphone, and hit play. "Keep your job at the school. Think about staying quiet." Her voice, crisp, clear, undeniable. Proof. I didn't smile. My face stayed flat, unreadable. But every step I took away from that cafe felt steadier than the last. The file sat in my inbox like a ticking clock. I had replayed Shayna's voice at least 10 times, sweet and sharp, a weapon cloaked in civility. Stay quiet or lose everything. It didn't feel like revenge when I hit send. Just balance, just math, no subject line, no explanation. I attached the recording and sent it directly to Shayna's husband's attorney. His name sat cold in my contacts, a remnant from when I'd once been asked to babysit during their mediation sessions. I closed the laptop, deleted the sent message, and pushed my chair back slowly. For once, silence felt like power, not punishment. Talia had just fallen asleep on the couch, tangled in her favorite quilt, when I reached for Shayna's iPad to cue up a cartoon. Her passcode was a 4-digit birthday, hers, of course. I swiped up and opened the mail app. Just instinct, or maybe curiosity. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. A draft email, unsent, addressed to enrollment office. No subject, no warmth, just cold execution. Once the wedding's done, we'll finalize Talia's enrollment. Full-time boarding, it's the only way I'll breathe again. I read it twice. My fingers went numb. This wasn't about a new school. This wasn't even about education. It was an escape plan. Shayna's, not Talia's. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, knees drawn up, the blue glow of the iPad dimming the room. Talia's soft breathing from across the hall felt like the only thing real. She trusted me. She didn't cry when she got here anymore. She laughed at my terrible pancake skills. She'd started humming again when she thought no one was listening, and Shayna wanted to disappear her, to silence her, cage her, exile her. I remembered being 12, crying alone in the laundry room after Delilah had said I'd ruined her birthday by existing. I'd clutched a ragged bear and pretended the buzzing dryer was applause. No one came to find me, but I had found Talia, and I wasn't going to leave her. The next morning, I packed her lunch like nothing had changed. She told me a joke she heard at school. I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in days. And when she left for class, I picked up the iPad again. I didn't hesitate. I deleted the draft email. Then I opened my phone and typed a new one. To Law Office of Margaret L. Hayes. Subject, custody inquiry, urgent body. I believe my niece is at risk. I would like to discuss legal options. Please call me at your earliest availability. I hit send. The office smelled like old paper and spearmint gum. Mrs. Hewitt, the retired vice principal, tapped her manicured nails against a file she'd reluctantly pulled from the archives. Her eyes narrowed as she flipped it open. She didn't even show up to the interview, she murmured, scanning the pages. We got this medical note. Claimed the child had severe trauma from home instability. I leaned forward. What kind of trauma? Mrs. Hewitt adjusted her glasses. Says here, chronic anxiety, fear-based outbursts, regression symptoms, classic signs of neglect. The words made my skin crawl. And then she handed me a copy of the diagnosis, typed, stamped, signed with a name I didn't recognize. I traced the lines with my fingers. None of it was real. None of it came from a doctor Talia had ever seen. This wasn't just Shayna being careless. This was premeditated, calculated. She didn't just lie about me. She lied about her own daughter. She used Talia's name to get an edge, to win a scholarship, to appear noble for handling so much. I walked out of the school trembling. My ears rang with fury. She had exploited her child, just like our mother had exploited us. I sat in my car for a long time before I made the call. Hi, I said, my voice barely steady. Do you have a Russell Montgomery in residence? There was a pause. Then a tired voice on the other end confirmed the address. The apartment complex in Houston looked like it hadn't seen fresh paint in a decade. I climbed the stairs slowly, every step heavier than the last. Russell answered after the third knock, gray at the temples, stooped slightly, eyes that scanned me with disbelief and something like guilt. I didn't expect— You should have, I said quietly. He let me in. The room was small, clean, lived in. A recliner faced a muted TV, and a dusty bookshelf leaned against the wall. There was a photo of me at 5, missing a tooth, holding a popsicle. It was crooked in its frame. I didn't leave because I wanted to, he said, pouring instant coffee into chipped mugs. Your mother made it impossible to stay, and Shayna, she knew how to twist things even back then. She told me you abandoned us, I whispered. I begged her not to push me out. But your mother? He shook his head. She said I'd poisoned you. My hands clenched in my lap. You didn't, his voice cracked. But I left anyway. We sat in silence. Then he reached under the couch and pulled out a weathered shoebox. Inside, old photos, a bracelet I made in second grade, a letter I wrote at 10 and never got back. It was sealed, unopened. "You kept these," I said, my throat tight. He nodded. I didn't know if I deserved to open them. I looked at him, really looked. Not the ghost my mother painted, but the man who had been erased. Like me. I finally said, "I'm not letting this cycle keep going. I'm going to fight for her." That night, I called my lawyer. "Let's start the process. Temporary guardianship, as soon as possible." She asked me why. I told her everything. And after we hung up, I stood in the quiet of my kitchen, lights off, the city humming outside. I pressed my palm flat against the cool glass of the window and whispered, "They won't silence me. Not again." The leather cover of the journal felt almost sacred in my hands, softened by time, its corners worn like old skin. Russell sat across from me, his eyes shadowed with memory, his hands folded, motionless. He didn't say a word as I opened to the first page. They weren't diary entries. They were confessions, dates, names, patterns of manipulation, starting with Delilah's threats and turning into tactics. How she cut off his friends, claimed he was emotionally unstable, then coached Shayna to repeat the narrative. She told me crying in front of Lori would make me look guilty. Shayna said she was helping protect Mom's reputation. Each entry felt like a slap, but it wasn't just the pain, it was the clarity. My childhood hadn't shattered on its own. It was dismantled piece by piece, then painted over like it never existed. When I reached the final page, the date matched the week he left. She said if I didn't leave, she'd tell Lori I touched her. I packed my bags that night. I closed the book with a shaking breath. He wasn't a villain. He was collateral. The sun beat down on Shayna's wedding with performative warmth. The vineyard was straight out of a lifestyle magazine, white silk drapes, gold-rimmed champagne, classical strings whispering under manicured hedges. But under that gloss, something ugly pulsed. I arrived in a navy dress, not black, not bright, just present. Talia clutched my hand tightly. Russell walked beside us, clean-shaven, collar pressed. The whispers began before we reached the seating area. "Is that—" She wasn't invited, was she? I thought she was in treatment or something. We walked through them all. At the altar, the officiant had just cleared his throat when I stepped forward. "Before this fairy tale continues," I said, voice low but carrying, "I'd like to offer a preface." Shayna froze. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. "This is a journal," I said, holding it up. "Not mine, my father's. The one you all thought abandoned us. Turns out he was forced to leave." The groom blinked. "What?" I walked up and handed it to him. "Read the last page." His hand shook as he took it. Then I turned to the crowd. "I wasn't invited today because I was inconvenient. I ruined the story. I didn't wear the right mask, but the truth doesn't need makeup. It survives anyway." Shayna stepped forward, face pale. "Lori, please, don't ruin—" I raised a hand. "No, you don't get to use that word. Not today." Talia moved closer to me. Shayna reached for her, but the child recoiled without a word. It was enough. That image, tiny, instinctive, real, said more than anything I could have screamed. "You wanted silence," I said quietly. "You got justice instead." Gasps rippled like dominoes. I saw someone pull out their phone. The officiant stepped back. Shayna's face was frozen, a porcelain mask threatening to crack. I turned to Talia. "Let's go. We've said enough." We walked away from the altar, from the facade, from the lie. Behind us, Russell's voice broke the silence. "The truth always finds its way back." The conference room at the local law firm wasn't built for drama, but it absorbed every ounce of it that day. Polished oak table, steel gray chairs, the scent of fresh print toner in the air, cold, sterile, and unforgiving. Perfect for what I was about to do. Shayna sat at the far end of the table beside her fiancé, Greg. He looked at her with a mix of concern and confusion, still processing the chaos I'd dropped into their wedding like a well-aimed grenade. Across from them sat a CPS liaison and my attorney, folders neatly stacked. "I don't need to talk much," I said, sliding the first report forward. "These will." Greg took the file. The color drained from his face. The psychological assessments described emotional neglect, coded patterns of verbal abuse, and developmental red flags in Talia. One noted how the child consistently referred to herself as a problem. Another recorded a statement from Talia, "Mom said I made her sick." The final report came from a licensed trauma specialist. Symptoms align with sustained emotional distress from a primary caregiver. Greg stared at Shayna. "You told me this was Lori's lie." Her voice cracked, brittle. "She manipulated everything. She always hated me. This is her vendetta." "You forged her diagnosis for a school application," I interrupted. "This isn't hate, it's consequence." Shayna pushed back from the table. "You ruined my life." "No," I said quietly. "You used a child to build a lie. I just pulled the curtain." My voice never rose, but it didn't have to. Truth speaks in tones shame can't mute. By evening, 3 wedding guests had posted vague but damning stories online. One tagged the venue. Another simply wrote, "We were lied to." Her fairy tale was unraveling, not because I was vengeful, but because I stopped being silent. On Christmas Eve, the doorbell rang at 7:46 p.m. Snow fell in heavy flakes, coating the walkway in a soft white hush. Shayna stood alone on the porch. Her makeup was minimal, her posture tense. She didn't bring gifts or excuses. "I didn't come for forgiveness," she said. "I just needed to say it." I waited. "I know I failed her. I failed you too. I couldn't admit it before because if I did—" She paused. "I'd have to face what I became." Inside, Talia laughed, stringing lights along the bottom of the staircase, singing to herself. I stepped aside and let Shayna into the hallway. She didn't hug me. I didn't offer. She watched her daughter from a distance. Her eyes shimmered. Not tears, not pride, just distance. "I'm trying," she said. I nodded once. It wasn't permission. It wasn't approval. Just acknowledgement that, this time she came without a mask. We stood like that for less than a minute before she turned and walked back into the snow. Talia looked up. Was that Aunt Shayna? I pulled her close, wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders. It used to be. As the door closed behind us, warmth filled the room. Glow from the tree, soft carols from the radio, the hum of peace hard won. But in the silence, the echoes lingered. A week after Christmas, Shayna called again, this time not to fight. It was New Year's Eve, late afternoon. Talia was napping on the couch, the last of the daylight curling gold around her cheeks. I opened the door to find Shayna bundled in a thick scarf, snowflakes clinging to her lashes, her posture slouched as though the year had aged her more than time ever could. She didn't ask to come in. She just said, "Can I talk?" I nodded and stepped aside. We sat in silence at the kitchen table for nearly a minute. Then she finally looked up. "Mom hit me too," she said. The words dropped like stones into a still lake, sending ripples into spaces neither of us wanted to disturb. "She'd throw plates when she was mad," Shayna continued. "Sometimes not at anyone, just to hear them break. She used to lock me in the closet for hours if I cried too loud." I didn't speak. I didn't move. My hands rested on the table, clenched so tight they were pale. "I swore I'd never be like her," she whispered. "But then I had Talia, and everything I hadn't dealt with. It just spilled out, and I didn't even see it. I thought I was in control." "You weren't," I said, voice calm but hard. "I know." She looked up again, tears brimming but not falling. "I'm trying, Lori. Not because you forced me, not even because I want forgiveness, but because I can't be that person anymore. I don't want my daughter scared of me." There was nothing triumphant in her tone, just an ache, raw and unvarnished. I saw in her not the sister I lost, but the mirror I once avoided. We weren't broken in the same way, but we were broken in the same house. Later that night, after Talia went to bed, I laid down the terms. "You want to be in her life? Fine. Counseling, weekly, documented." Shayna nodded. "I want joint custody in writing." Another nod. "And Delilah? She's done. No visits, no phone calls, no gifts." Shayna hesitated, then agreed. I didn't ask for an apology. I didn't need another wound open just to be dressed again. Sometimes healing isn't a warm reunion. Sometimes it's building a wall and handing someone the instructions not to climb it. As she left, I didn't watch from the window. I didn't chase. I didn't cry. For the first time in years, I didn't have to. I walk Talia to school now, every morning. We take the long route past the coffee shop she likes, even if we don't go in. She skips sometimes, humming songs from class. I don't hold her hand unless she asks. She likes the independence. Russell sends postcards from New Mexico. He says it's too warm to feel like January. I think that's the point. Delilah hasn't reached out, not once. Her silence is a gift I never knew I needed. Some nights I lie awake, wondering if Talia will remember any of it. The bruises, the whisper fights, the hollow quiet in her mother's house. I hope she doesn't. I pray she only remembers snow angels and pancakes and story time before bed. Some stories, I write in my journal, don't have perfect endings, just better chapters. That night, as I tucked Talia in, she clutched her stuffed rabbit to her chest. "Do you think Mommy loves me now?" she asked. I froze, then said, "She's learning." And I meant it. Outside, snow began to fall again. Soft, quiet, forgiving. Life doesn't hand us clean endings. It gives us jagged edges, unfinished sentences, and moments where we have to decide whether we'll carry the weight or let it go. I used to believe that family meant loyalty, no matter the cost. But I've learned that love without respect is just control in disguise. If you've ever felt like the forgotten one in your family, let me tell you this. You're not broken. You're brave. You're surviving a script you didn't write. And maybe, just maybe, you're strong enough to start a new one, your own. So let me ask you, have you ever had to choose between peace and being accepted? What did you pick? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this story touched something in your heart, type 1 in the comments or share where you're watching from. And if you didn't connect with it, tell me why. I welcome every perspective. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next story that just might feel a little too real.